Protesters greeted Prime Minister Julia Gillard as she arrived at a public forum on carbon tax in Perth. The opinion amongst them divided.
It's really essential if we want to say yes to saving our environment, if we want to say yes to a future for our children, and if we want to say yes to saving millions of lives around the world, then we really have to start taking the first steps.
I mean, this is the most radical change to the economy that we've ever had. Even she agrees that it's a huge economic reform and it's clearly deserving of an election.
Ms Gillard says she's committed to a carbon tax and cutting carbon emissions by 5% by 2020, despite the global economic crisis.
Our economy has very strong fundamentals. And so when you're looking at when's the right time for a reform, we can look forward to economic growth, to jobs continuing to grow. We have a good, prosperous economy today, largely because in decades gone by, people fronted up to the hard things and got them done. Floating the dollar, not popular at the time. Tariff reductions, really unpopular at the time. Even the GST, I opposed it at the time. But, you know, we live with that reform now and we use that revenue source through state governments for things people need. So hard reforms are the things that keep us prosperous in the long term. This is a hard reform, but I think we should get it done.
The Prime Minister addressed a select group of West Australians at a People's Forum at Perth Town Hall, taking their questions on the carbon tax.
What incentive exists for the many Australians about to receive the rebate to change their behaviour?
Almost 6 million households will see enough assistance that they can still go and buy the same things that they always used to buy, and life goes on because they've been assisted for it. Or people can, in their own lives, start making cleaner, greener choices, because one of the things that will happen with putting a price on carbon is goods that you and I buy that have got less carbon pollution embedded in them will be comparatively cheaper than goods that have got more carbon pollution embedded in them. So, you know, that sends a signal, if you like, to us. But the principal driver here is the signal to the around 500 biggest polluters.
Will some of the carbon tax be made available to create funding opportunities for the community environmental groups to access for all their local bush and waterway management?
The Biodiversity Fund is in the package, and if you want to have a look at the details of that and the details of anything else that I've spoken about tonight, it's on the cleanenergyfuture.gov.au website, and that does have a household estimator so that you can put in all your personal circumstances and work out what's coming to you through a tax cut or a pension increase or a family payment increase. But yes, we have thought about the need for biodiversity and better land management.
Ms Gillard defended her election promise not to introduce a price on carbon, saying she's acting on scientific and economic advice.
I could look at the Parliament the Australian people voted for, and I could have said, look, it's all too hard. Can put all of this in the too hard basket. You know, forget about getting on with cutting carbon pollution for another 3 years, and then make the journey to that cut back in 2020 all the harder because we started later. Or I could have worked with this Parliament to get something done. I decided to work with this Parliament.
And she made it clear there will be penalties for those companies that abuse the tax.
If people represent you, look, I've put my price up because of the carbon tax and that representation isn't true, the fines for that can be up to $1.1 million for every misrepresentation.
But carbon tax wasn't the only thing the public wanted to grill Ms Gillard about. Nearly half the questions asked had nothing to do with the tax.
I think it reflects probably the way West Australians are thinking at the moment. You know, I doubt that it's the most important thing in their lives, and they basically told us that by going off questions tonight.
And after the forum, audience members say they're willing to learn more about the tax.
I think the Prime Minister's understanding of the subject for a start, and some of the information that she's made available to us tonight and the answers that she's given have encouraged me to develop my understanding of the subject. So I may well be a little more in favour at this moment than I was earlier today.
My fear is that it's going to force manufacturers out the country offshore because it will be cheaper to manufacture offshore. That wasn't brought up. and I don't know the answer to that.
I think that one thing that Julia Gillard would have expected tonight was a bit more hostility, and there wasn't a great deal. There were some questions that were curlier than others towards the end in particular, but they were quite respectful, and they were interested about the policy as opposed to you lied.
Clarissa Phillips reporting for thewest.com.au.